As the U.S. Secretary of Interior launched the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative, the remains of 9 Native American children returned home to the Rosebud Sioux tribe from the Carlisle boarding school.
It is a dark piece of our country's history that's coming to light as reports of indoctrination and abuse at these schools surfaces.
In tonight's Eye on Keloland, Lauren Solik takes you to Sisseton, South Dakota, to hear about the experiences at a Catholic-run school in Orphanage there.
For more than half a century, the Tekakwitha boarding school and orphanage stood on this land. Native American children attended the school from the 1940s to the 70s. It wasn't until about 10 years ago that the buildings were demolished and the land was turned into a park.
Here is where the papoose house was, which is where they kept the babies. And connected to the papoose house was a tunnel system that led to this property here, which was the bigger, longer building that was the dormitory, classrooms, and living quarters for some of the clergymen.
Father John Poland started the Catholic boarding school in Sisseton. Before it opened, Lillian Owen remembers him going to 3 churches in town.
Every other Sunday, or he'd go to one of those. That's how he knew the people, how we lived.
When she was 9 years old, Owen says Poland would take her and other children to a Catholic boarding school in Stefan on the Crow Creek Reservation. The kids would travel more than 200 miles to school in the back of a covered truck.
There we got up 6 o'clock every morning. Every morning we went to church. That's how we learned. Rain, blizzard, snow, anything, we still go.
By the time she started the 5th grade, Poland had built the Tekakwitha boarding school and orphanage in Sisseton. Owen was one of the first students.
I think his idea was that instead of going way over there 200-300 miles away, he wanted, kids to be near, with their parents. And so that's how he started that school.
After graduating from Tekakwitha in the 8th grade, Owen went back to Stefan, South Dakota for high school. After that graduation, she came back to work for Father Poland at Tekakwitha Hospital. Poland also had Owen and other girls clean his house.
How he was teaching us how to keep things clean. And so it was my turn, so I went. And in his bedroom, we used to have to make his bed, change sheets. Oh, he was the cleanest priest I ever saw. We had to even iron his shorts and everything.
Owen remembers Poland as being a good man.
People think, he's mean to kids. He's not. He's not at all. I can say that thousands of times, and he's not that way.
There were a lot of reports of capital punishment where, they were given lickings. I had multiple elders tell me that that's what they referred to the punishment as.
But Owen's experience is not shared by many others who attended Tekakwitha.
And that they would be lined up along the wall, if not taken into private, and paddled really hard, where they would have bruises and welts up and down their legs.
Allison Renville is the public information officer for the Sisseton-Wahpeton Oyate. While asking elders if they'd like to be interviewed for this story, many preferred to tell their stories anonymously.
A lot of our members that suffer through these times, they're elders now, and unfortunately, due to the stigma behind sexual abuse in American culture, it's hard for them to come forward, and they told these stories to me anonymously.
Renville listened to their stories and shared 6 of them with Keloland News. These anonymous elders were at Tekakwitha between the 50s and 70s. One woman said she was abused by the nuns and forced to perform sexual acts on them using toys they were given for the holidays. Another remembers children being left in the cribs crying for what seemed like forever because no one would come to check on them. One man shared that he was dyslexic and the nuns would whip his hands and eyes and accused him of faking his disability. He also spoke of sexual abuse that would happen in the bathrooms at the hands of the priests. Other women remember having to wear specific clothing and have their hair cut to look identical to one another.
Honestly, when you hear what some of our tribal members went through, I don't even know how they're still standing. I don't know how you could go through the things that some of our people went through and still be breathing even. It was so complete. The oppression on those individuals was so complete.
Poland died in 1969. Over the years, his order has denied any knowledge of abuse, saying it's nearly impossible to determine if the claims of abuse are accurate because it was so long ago and the children were so young. The land where Tekakwitha stood has since become a park where the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate children can play, and events, like this one from January of this year, can honor the children who suffered in the boarding school and orphanage. With Eye on KELOLAND, I'm Lauren Solik.
Now, some of the boarding school nuns were members of the Sisters of the Divine Savior out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
In a statement to KELOLAND News, the director of communications says that they were shocked to learn of the reports of abuse. She goes on to say that the organization knows very little of what actually happened at the school, since nearly all of the nuns who served there have died.
You can read their full statement under this story on KELOLAND.com. There you can also hear from the son of a man who was adopted through the orphanage for just $15.